Hello, hello, hello. It's Dr. Rowe here. Hope you are well. It's Friday night. I have had a long day. I've been teaching today and I've come offline now. And I was going to head home and I thought, you know what, let me just have a conversation with everybody about, well, life, but being a parent. And I thought I'd tackle the subject because we're coming up to Christmas, coming up to the end of the year. A lot of you have been in lockdown with your kids, but also, we've had this kind of difficult period where a lot of kids are at home. For many people, they can or can't deal with that. And also, I think we're at a point in time where how we hold the space for our kids, how we manage that space through these next couple of months, I think is really important. So for me, I think we have a duty as a parent to guide them, but at the same time, give them the space to express to us how they're feeling about. Because let's face it, the language and some of the stuff that's coming at us from the media, government announcements, etc. Listen, I've got to be careful what I say because, with Facebook, stuff gets switched and locked out if you say certain things that are controversial. So much for freedom of speech. But my concern is, from a parent perspective, that we may not be necessarily communicating to them in the way that we should be. And some people are talking about conflicts with their kids, maybe not feeling that connection. Some children are closing down, locking out, becoming insular, going into a world of digital. This is the world they're living in now because it's easier to hide in that space, especially if they're not connecting with their friends and they're not getting out and having the basic connections that they need at this age. We all need them, but children particularly. Think about it, their little human souls are forming and shaping right now under our feet. And if 6-12 months goes by and that evolution is stinted, stifled, masked, suffocated, it can define and change who they become in the future. I know that because I've worked with so many people. So this is not a subject about money and all those things that you might want me to talk about, for those of you that do. It's a subject about our kids. And thought I'd share a couple of things with you here. See if I can get this on the screen here. So the first thing to remember is that they model us. I mean, I've done a lot of work with parents over the years through the events that we've run and private work, one-to-one. Conversation about kids comes up all the time. And I think it's so important to remember that literally every breath, every action, every movement, every tonality, gesture, everything we do, our children model us. They are mini versions of us until such time that they realize they don't want to be mini versions of us and they kick back, or an occurrence happens where they redefine their beliefs of who they are and how they operate in the world. So we have a chance whilst they're young, they're a blank canvas, to at least help them paint a picture that's got beauty in it, it's got abundance in it, it's got a more roundedness about it. And all of us as parents wrestle with that, myself included. And there's times when we're frustrated and our kids make our blood boil because they might do something, we're like, argh. And that is because they are basically kicking back. And this is number 2, is your world and their world. So the first thing is, ask yourself a question. Number 1, what you're doing that could in some way create a better model for them. Maybe the way you react to a situation, or the way you act under stress, or the way you articulate what's going on around the world at the moment. So what you see, read and hear through the media, how do you then filter that down into the household, and how do you articulate that? Because they're going to pick up on that. And I've done a lot of work with unconscious programming of kids, well, people in general actually, but sadly it's just like a sponge process, especially if they have no frame of reference, if they're young enough to have no other set of beliefs or values or rules or definitions or picture of the world. Their picture of the world becomes the picture that you paint for it. And particularly at the moment where our kids are not allowed out, they're not allowed into that integrative social community where they pick up and they see different perspectives and have different experiences, and they maybe get a little bit of a hassle at school, or they come back or they hear something and they question it and they ask you. Now all they've got is you, and they've got your world and your model of the world. So I'm asking provocative questions here in this space just to give you a chance to think about that. You may disagree or may agree. Either way, it's a fact. Our kids model us. So then the question is, what is the model you want them to follow? And can you give them access to inspirational material? I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff on the internet at the moment, but there's some great stuff and there's some shit stuff. So is there a way you can filter that? What do you want? Because remember, their moods and their attitude and what they see through the eyes of somebody else through some perceived video camera that is distorted on a YouTube video that is a channel that's got 2 million viewers because it's, I don't know, following some kids' lives, and that's it, and your kids go and they become consumed by somebody else's life. So now your children will model, anyone, if you're watching this, you probably understand what I'm talking about. Your children will literally model that. So understand that if they become hooked on a YouTube channel or a channel that is following another children's life or another kid's life or another family's life, they're actually modeling that family. That's how their world is being programmed. And a lot of people just, I mean, if you haven't seen it, The Social Dilemma on Netflix is a really powerful video to watch. And I'll tell you why, because it really gives you an idea of how our kids just get hooked through social media. So that's worth looking at. The other one is your world versus their world. So most of what you teach and what you want to tell your kids to do is based on your set of beliefs. I know that because even me, I have my set of beliefs, and it's like we want to impart them on our children because we believe that they're right. Our rules and our beliefs are the beliefs that we think are the right things for our kids. But our kids have a different world, and where they kick back against us and where there's a conflict sometimes and where there's an argument. This is all about communication, by the way, which is why I put a link down to our event here, because at our last event, we had a lot, and I didn't realize, I didn't even appreciate this. You think about it, I'm teaching communications course and I'm thinking business, career, investing, speaking publicly, how to progress up the corporate ladder, how to grab the attention of groups of people, etc. But we had children at the event, but we also had parents there that were there for their careers, but they came back and they realized that some of the tools they learnt were brilliant for their kids. They were even teaching it to their kids, and their kids' communication became more effective, but they became more effective with their kids as well. So you have to understand that how your world is perceived through their eyes is different to how your world is perceived through your eyes. They see your world as a completely separate way. So you might think you're articulating something. This is how it looks. This is black, this is green. But they don't see it that way. They might see it yellow or purple. So see if you can take the time through your communication, through rapport. So one of the components we talk about in the CWI process is rapport, for example. Understanding how to get into a rapport with your children in such a way that you understand their world. That means slowing back, stepping down, physically reducing your body size if you have to. If they're sitting down, sit down with them. Become smaller, emotionally become smaller, and get back into that space. And I don't mean in a negative way, I mean just go into a space that becomes your child's world and see the situation through their eyes. Understand what their fears are. Empathize. Get it. And again, there's 4 styles of communication I teach on my CWI course, and people are like, oh my god, this is so important for my kids. And I was like, yeah, good point. If you're in this style for your children, they go back. If you go in this style, they go, oh my gosh, thank you mummy, thank you daddy. So understanding what style is appropriate is really important. So that's another important element. And again, those of you that are parents that are struggling, you should look at, join us, go and look at the testimonials on the booking page, and you'll see how many people got amazing results from their own personal lives. So become your child in the way you communicate, and at least get a sense of where they're at to see if you can get that connection. And then the last one is the archetypes, and this is a hard one to explain because I actually go through this in a lot more detail. When I do the CWI event, we do the Archetype Exercise. You'll be doing this. Those of you joining us already and you're watching, it's fine, you can be with us anyway. But you're going to see us demonstrate this, and the power of this is incredible. When I get people shifting through the archetypes and having conversations, it's like some people get expressive, they get tearful, they have an insight, how come I didn't know that? As an example, one of the archetypes is the lover. Okay, so now the lover, I don't mean sexual lover, I mean lover in terms of connected with the universe in a loving way. And that archetype is very powerful. And unfortunately, as parents, we might think we're in that mode, but we're not. We're in a different archetype. And the problem is if you're in one of the other 3 archetypes, that archetype won't be the right one to communicate to your child. So knowing how to go into that archetype and at the same time maintaining your role as a parent and detaching yourself from your the angst and playing out the role of the lover example in this archetype, and connecting that rapport with your child, and at the same time seeing their situation and communicating with a language that they can understand. It's a game changer. You'll soften them. They'll open up in a completely different way, because our problem, of course, is if we try and strangle them with our beliefs and our rules about how we see the world and how we want them to be, and we don't think of it as that, but by our actions we are. If you don't believe me, the next time you have a kickback from your child, your children, it'll be because there is a belief that they have that's different to yours, and it has to be my way or the highway, and they're like, no, mummy or daddy, there is another way. We see it differently, and we have to get into that space. And this is where the archetype shifting really works with an understanding of going in and building rapport and being in your child's place. place. So I don't know if this makes any sense to any of you watching this. And if it does, I'm hoping it's going to get you reflecting a little bit on where you're at the moment and what you're doing with your kids, because it's really important. This is a vital time. We need to hold this space for our kids. If we don't sort this out now, if we don't help protect our kids over this next year, I think a lot of children are going to get fucked up. I'm sorry to use the language, but I mean it sincerely. You know why? Because mental health issues are growing massively. Teenage girls' self-abuse is growing. It's like 1 in 4 now, I think it is, are self-harming. We have to stop this. And we do it through changing the way we communicate with our kids, helping to understand them, because they need to express. They can't express, so they do something dangerous to themselves. They need another outlet. And we have a growing problem with this culturally. And this has not been helped by COVID, which has shut people down, isolated them, brought them onto screens, created a dangerous place. It's not necessarily the most positive message, but the underlying message is positive, which is that there are tools to do it. I beg you, if you're a parent or you know friends that are a parent and you want to become a better communicator in your relationship, come and join me in February. It is a life-changing event. It is 3 days, and I will take you through lots of different tools that are amazing for communication. These tools are not taught anywhere else. When I launched it, people were blown away. I mean, it's hard to explain it, but there's people coming up saying, but this is like your intellectual property just being unloaded. Nobody ever teaches it like this. It's a complete system, but it can be used anywhere, on a personal level, on a professional level. You will not regret it. And we've kept the price ridiculously low because it's an online event, whereas before people were paying 4 times what you're paying to be at the event, and it's going to be amazing. So get yourself registered early, because we are going to restrict a little bit on the numbers, because I want to make it still relatively intimate, and it'd be a pleasure to join you there as well. So hopefully I'll see you on that event. But anyway, in the meantime, have a great weekend, and hopefully there was some value in this if you're a parent and maybe you're thinking about how to talk to your kids over the weekend.